You just tuned in to Up for Discussion. We're up for discussion here at Ultra Products this evening. This evening is going to be a little bit more off the cuff than we have been in the past, but just roll with us, folks. It's going to be good and excited about it.
Yep.
We've got Jarrett Big Dog back with us this evening. Jarrett Smith.
Lewis.
Yeah, there we go. Jarrett Lewis. I don't know where I picked up Smith.
Jarrett Smith. Never heard that one
I
before.
don't know.
I feel like, I know where I picked
It's
it
a
up.
default.
It's the hat.
No, I know where I picked it up. There is a Jaron Smith that comes in the shop a lot.
Yes,
So,
there is.
yeah, that's why. So
We'll go with that.
yeah, or I just made it up. I don't know what I did.
We said it's off the cuff tonight. I got my blueberry muffin and my coffee, so you're going to have to watch and listen to me eat some tonight, quite possibly.
Just making sure that we got audio.
Yep, scream and holler at us out there if we don't. We've had that problem a couple times.
Oh, we got it. Yeah, we're good.
I think so.
Oh, I'm positive. We've got audio this evening. So this evening, if you're tuning in, make sure that you do all the things that we ask you to do, like, share, comment. Comments are always great because comments keep us going. And so if you want us to shut up, just don't comment. So,
yeah, and there'll be some things hopefully we get into tonight that would really help the conversation.
yeah, if you
It's going
guys
to be
chime in.
somewhat opinionated
It is.
to some degree tonight.
Tonight's very opinionated.
So
Very.
that gives you out there listening an option to tell us how you really feel.
Yep. We like to know how you feel.
We do. Yeah. Tell us how you really feel, and it'll help us talk about some of this. Before we get too deep, looky here.
What do you got there?
We went on a big shed hunt the other day, and we found this little guy, and I think it's one of the most interesting sheds we've personally ever found. Well, maybe not the most, but it's right up there because it's a young deer. Obviously, I don't know how well people are going to be able to see that. I'll put it up there.
That's pretty awesome.
I mean, that little feller, the old saying, and this may just be my opinion, he needs a couple more years.
But I would say he's got potential.
I would say a lot of potential.
He's got potential. I'd say he's got uniqueness going on every point except for his brow tine. Everywhere that antler comes to a point, I guess you could say it splits.
Yeah.
It splits into two.
We had a real
looks like something that was made in a shop somewhere, but I promise we picked it up off the ground. Look, this has potential to be really get wide right there. Don't you think?
Yep.
The whole thing probably does. But anyway, that one found these two. Well, yeah, I found these.
Doug found one.
Fat Doug found one.
And
We'll
I
give him
found the
credit.
other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the same place.
Yeah.
Separate hunt, wasn't it?
Doug can't be with us this evening, so
he can't defend himself. We really found him. We throwed one out there and let Doug pick it up and feel like he found it.
Good job, boy.
Way to go, Doug.
All right. So it's a pretty nice deer.
Yeah, nice.
Real heavy.
Not huge, just overall scoring deer.
I'm saying he's a 2-year-old.
I'm saying he probably needs another year or two as well.
Yeah.
That's
Gets
my
the pass.
opinion.
Yeah.
Here we go on the opinions.
Doesn't have enough mass yet.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just got 5-inch bases probably.
So we've got several people watching. Several of you guys have tuned in. We appreciate it. Rodney, Rob, you guys are always on. We appreciate that. This evening, we are covering things that I'm sure will be somewhat controversial, but that's all right. We don't care to address those things. And so what we're talking about this evening is pushing the extremes. And what that pertains to is the extremes in archery. There's 2 different camps, and I would say those camps would be the speed camp and the weight camp.
Yep.
And
the heavy versus light, or
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you guys have been following that,
which you can't you can't not talk about speed as well if you're talking about when we say heavy versus light, heavy arrows versus light arrows.
Yeah. And not even just the arrow, but also weighting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
front of center. Do we need how much? What's the percentage?
yeah.
Some people say, 25. Next guy says 16. That's really extreme. But all that stuff.
So that's what we're going to be discussing.
And it's going to be
evening.
somewhat opinionated with a little bit of what we know just from what we've done.
Yeah.
I don't have a machine that takes down all the scientific data.
And if somebody knows of something that we're missing or something that we're leaving out, I mean, if someone hears us speaking and you're like, yeah, but you're leaving this out of the equation, let us know.
Let us know.
Because we want to make sure that we include it in the equation and that we give you guys the best information that we know to give you.
We want to get smarter.
That's right. Smarter every day. We'd like to get connected with him.
That would be awesome. I bet he could engineer us something to figure out the truth, because there's all kinds of small diameter penetrates deeper. Well, in foam and gel, maybe it does, but does it on animals?
See, I'm in that camp. I am.
I don't know. I don't know if I can get behind that.
I think it does.
The body cavity of a deer is not the same as a target, though. It's all soft and jello-like.
Yeah.
So does it really matter that much?
I've heard that argument, but I think it does. That's the thing. So much of what we're arguing and discussing is, I think it does. But really, is there a way to discover and to legitimately say, absolutely, this does? And so
I think there's one way to prove it. It'd be like the Dr. Ashby, is you have to shoot an animal and shoot it over and over and over before the rigor mortis sets in with different arrow shafts to test that with the same broadhead versus the same everything. You know what I mean?
I think that's right.
How do you effectively do that?
I think the problem, and I highly respect Mr. Ed Ashby. I don't know him. I've watched a lot of his stuff. But all of his tests, sorry, I'm trying to finish my blueberry. All of my blueberry muffin, which was extremely good. But all of his tests are done with a recurve and traditional equipment or longbow.
Yeah.
Some people don't realize that. And some people say, well, the bow's the bow. Well, it's not entirely true either. I don't know why mine's.
Yeah, I was checking that out too. Mine over here is bugging out.
Well, I can't help yours. Mine is not.
Well, anyway,
fast forward motion.
Josh says he's in the Me Too camp. What is the Me Too camp? I thought that was a bad thing, Josh.
Josh, man.
I'm not in the Me Too movement.
You and Bill Cosby can hang out for the evening.
Anyway, no, I think he's talking about the small arrow.
Yeah.
Or the small diameter arrows.
Yeah.
We hope.
We've got this new option this evening, which is kind of nice. We can, if I figure out how to do it here. Oh, looky there. We can start pulling up all of our comments as they come in. So if you guys get a chance, comment just so we can see it. It'd be nice. So
you think the small diameter definitely, because it shows up in foam, going deeper. There's something that translates to an animal. I think.
I'm not saying it translates
to some degree.
I'm not saying that it translates to the meat of the animal, but I feel like it would do to the bone of the animal.
Yeah, which is the most important part to penetrate.
Yeah,
because the meat's easy.
Right,
easy peasy.
Josh says he's in on the small diameter. So
yeah, well.
So not the Me Too move.
We appreciate that Josh is part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess where are we going with that in that regard? So where do you stand on it, Lathan?
My thing is that everybody's shooting it into kind of what you said. Everybody's shooting it into either gel, foam, or fabric. When I say fabric, like bag targets, and stuff. And by having the outsert, I mean it obviously when that punches into foam, it's creating a channel by which the foam doesn't rub the shaft as much. So it definitely goes deeper into foam and mediums that are designed to stop targets. Like everything we shoot with our bow or crossbow, it's designed to stop the arrow. It was its function to stop the arrow.
Yeah.
A deer or a body isn't necessarily its primary design to stop fast moving penetrating objects. So is it even measurable on a carcass or the body of a deer or an elk or whatever you're shooting? Is it even measurable how much, because
I
people's
feel like
well,
it's got to be measurable in some way. Like there's got to be something that says, all right, this is, I mean, because to me, even with a lot of the broadheads that have come out, they've come out with a cupping mechanism because the thought is they're pushing the meat away as they come through to create a channel that the arrow can go through.
right. I'm not 100% either way. I'm a little bit torn on it. My thing is I don't like to just spit things out just because, well, I see it in foam going deeper. Well, it's going to go deeper in a deer every time. Well, is it? How many deer have you shot with? And people shoot deer with them, and they say, "Well, it went through the deer, but so did mine." If I'm shooting the normal, what's the normal diameter? The
2 point or 0.244 is
yeah.
standard.
That's kind of the standard.
Yeah, it gets weird there because everybody has a little different size. Like, I think Black Eagles is 0.245, and I want to say Easton has a 0.246.
They consider them like 6.5 millimeter, like the outside of the shaft, 6.5s, right?
Yes.
So that's what most people pick up first things first. That is kind of like you said. There's some variation there between from company to
there
company.
is,
but virtually we're talking about thousands, so virtually they're the same.
Yeah.
And then you go down when it says 5 mil and 4 mil, you're talking about the inner diameter, correct?
I'm not sure on that. Why did it change? Why would it go from outside to inside?
Well, I could be wrong.
I think you're wrong on that. It's outside.
Okay, so you're 5 millimeter, 5 millimeter, and 4 millimeters, but 4 mil.
Funny.
Anyway, so it's the diameter, and they're the hypothesis or the census or the whatever you want to say out there is that the small ones go deeper, penetrate better.
Yeah,
and I'm 100% they do in foam and targets that were designed to stop arrows.
But let me ask you guys this: if you have a broadhead's supposed to cut and split open the wound channel. So how much is the arrow playing effect on that? Then, if you have a broadhead that's sharp and cuts the wound channel open,
it would still play an effect.
What would it though?
Yeah, but
with bone,
some of those broadheads will make a hole that big. Really, it's not touching too much.
If we're talking bone, it still would. It's all subject to what you're shooting too, based on.
And that's a whole other thing.
Man.
But if it just pokes through the bone and don't break the bone,
there's a hole here.
If the bone's broke at the broadhead, then it's not dragging the shaft either.
Right.
So there's no friction and blood and fat and all those.
Especially to get those single bevels. They're designed to hit and pop the bone open.
But do they?
I'm about to get ticked off here.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. But here's the thing: in the archery industry, there's something that happens where people create ideologies for the sole purpose of selling things.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
true.
that's what
absolutely.
That's at the end of this whole podcast. That is my thing, that I don't want to just believe it because it's been said. Because it's just like, oh, this is it. Heavy arrows penetrate deeper every time. Well, do they? Does a 650 grain arrow penetrate deeper than a 400 grain arrow that's going 70 feet per second faster?
So that being the case, we have to only go off what we see, what we see here and what we experience.
Yes.
And gosh, on that's tough, because the real world aspects of that, I feel like my experience this year on small diameter, I blew through everything that I shot through. I would put it right on their shoulders because I wanted to see, did it correlate? And I felt like on the back end, it did.
But do you know that you hit shoulders and broke shoulders?
Yeah, I do.
I mean,
I'm the one that cuts all my deer up.
Right.
So yeah,
so there was
100%.
there was broken bones in the shoulder,
obliterated.
and the arrow was in the ground.
6 inches.
But my thing is,
How far was the deer?
I could say that I have this. I have many of the same stories.
I'm sure you do.
You know, that with a 6.5 or whatever, I have many of the same stories. So I don't know that's valid. That says that's for sure. And Josh, what'd Josh say there? Kinetic energy transfer test.
That's what we've got to figure out. We've got to figure out a good way to figure out kinetic energy. Because kinetic energy,
but there's all
you
kinds,
cannot argue with kinetic energy.
Yeah, but there's all kinds of people out there that say kinetic energy is not where it's at. It's momentum.
Those people are full of it.
Because soon as, and they're probably smarter than us, because I don't want to look at them and say they're full of it. Because kinetic energy,
how does momentum
totally
and kinetic
gone,
how are they not the
totally
same?
Disappears at impact, right? And then you're all at momentum.
No,
because the arrow is never getting faster. And kinetic energy is what's stored up in the arrow as it's flying.
Yes, but you're not losing it entirely.
But kinetic is always dipping as the arrow's moving.
It's always dipping.
It's always coming down, 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 down till impact. And then, from my understanding, I could be so far
stopping. That would be my argument. Until stopping, kinetic is moving until stop.
Well, no, because now it's pushing. So the kinetic is gone and it has to push through an animal. And now it's all in momentum, right?
Nah, I don't.
Before that, it's stored up.
If that was
before
the
that,
case,
it's stored up and say it's flying at 300 feet a second. It's flying at 300 feet a second at impact, and now no more is it flying under its own. It's using whatever was stored up to push itself through the target. And that's the momentum chart, right?
I don't like what you're saying.
Momentum transfers the energy. That's what Josh says.
Gosh, we really need someone.
We really don't know what we're talking about.
We need someone a whole lot smarter than us.
So here's what I say at the end of the, not at the end of
That's why we brought Jared on.
Yeah.
Here's my thinking behind this, and you guys can go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong.
Let me hush and let you talk.
Like if you take something like my
You're
car.
fresher. You just graduated a few years ago. We've been out of school long enough. I don't even remember what E minus whatever squared is. Go ahead.
If you take something like my car, well, let's think like a car wreck. If you take like my car and hits a guardrail at 60 miles an hour, it's going to do some damage. But if you take a semi truck at 45 miles per hour, it's going to tear that guardrail up because there's more weight behind it. That's my thinking and process.
Have you been listening to what we've been saying today?
Yes.
Because I believe I said the exact same thing earlier.
Pretty close when we were talking, before you were here.
But almost arguing your point. And here's why. Let's say my Prius is going 120 miles an hour.
That's a Prius that's moving on right there.
It's trucking.
I feel like I've went 120 in that Prius before.
It's very possible.
No, I'm kidding.
So
just 100.
So that Prius is going 120 miles an hour. It hits a concrete wall.
I don't know why that's funny too.
It's going to be a pancake and it's not going anywhere.
You are correct.
All right.
But
I'm back.
Let's are you
okay?
Let's assume that there's a semi that's doing the same. Let's say it's going 35 and it hits the same wall. It's carrying way more weight.
Right.
But if on the back end it's done the exact same thing to that wall, what was the point of it? And that was our argument today, because it was like, and we're getting away from the small diameter argument.
Well, let's hold on, back up a second. Then let's take it back to the construction side of it. you know, when you're driving in a bigger nail or something, you want to bust up concrete, you grab a 5-pound sledgehammer or a 10-pound sledgehammer. Why don't you just grab a handheld and swing it faster than you can the sledgehammer?
Okay. Let me get in on this one.
You know what I'm saying?
For years, they swore everyone should swing a 28 ounce or bigger big framing hammer. And I can outdrive most guys that have a 28-inch framing hammer or a 28 ounce with a 19 or a 20. I can drive 20s and 60s pole barn nails fast. And I don't know if it's just me, but I think it's because I can put more speed in the hammer.
Maybe.
And we used to have this argument because I swung a hammer for years with guys, and there'd be guys come out there and they'd be packing this hammer that, you know, it took 3 men to get it out of the truck and 2 men to hang it on their belt, but then they were going to be able to swing it by themselves, you know. And
So you're saying that speed wins?
it would seem to me in swinging hammers, which is a total different thing, but with some of the same ideas, that you can put more hammer speed in that 19 to 20 ounce hammer and you drive nails faster. And that could go a couple ways. Does it actually push the nail in each strike faster, or can you get 2 blows in on that nail to their 1? That I don't know, but I'm just telling you, give somebody a 28 ounce big S-wing framing hammer.
I can barely swing that thing.
Yeah. You know, I'm even talking about someone that can swing it, because I can swing it.
Yeah.
But I do better with a 20 ounce. I can tell I'm seating nails. Well, we'd pit ourselves against each other just to try out there.
Well, is it because you're getting more repetition because you can swing the lighter hammer faster?
I think it's a combo. It seems like that nail moves the same amount, give or take, or the measurement that the 28 is winning by is so minuscule that you're better off with the 20 because you end up getting more blows in quicker than he gets. You get 10 in while he gets 8 in, so the nail's down, which would be the same correlation of speed and weight. Are you better just to go light? And I'm not talking off the Richter scale light arrow wise, because it's going to help you downrange later on your flat and your pin gap and your time to target.
I guess that's where most of the time my argument is middle ground on most of these things.
Right.
Now, I could be wrong in that.
Yeah.
And I will acknowledge that.
And
but,
you probably are.
But I think
no. I go that way too. And I'll tell you why. I've always went middle ground because it seems safe. One guy says, man, shoot, you know, light and fast. Next guy's like, shoot as heavy as you can, you know, throw a 700 grain rascal out there with a 300 grain broadhead or 200 grain broadhead on it. And I've always like, well, stay in the middle because most people are.
So hunting. What was your weight this year?
Most people are hunting in the middle right now, give or take.
Most people are voting in the middle too. So some
people are stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
With you.
Boo.
That's a song. What's my arrow weight?
Yeah. What's your arrow grain that you hunted with this year?
I elk hunted a little heavier. I elk hunted at 480.
Why'd you go heavier? Because
I've been told heavier is better at penetrating.
So you bought into it.
Yeah. Well, I bought onto plenty of things. And then I would have whitetail hunted.
I bet you used the acorn cruncher too, didn't you?
You know I did. And put them in my pockets and threw them out of the tree because they could hear them falling. But I shaved 25 grains off that because when I got back, I put 80-pound limbs on my bow. And I could not get a good hole with that 150 grain point on the front. It's like it was breaking the spine down too much. So I dropped to 125 grain field points. And I shaved 25 off that, and that's what I hunted deer with all year.
If you guys know what you're shooting, put it in the comments. We'd like to know what your grains are. It'd be kind of nice to know what
Yeah.
where
I
other
mean,
guys are falling average.
if you don't have a clue, that's okay. But
I ended up setting somewhere on 470 this year.
That's where I was setting at, about
Okay.
470-ish.
So we were all shooting roughly the same weight for the most
yeah,
part.
and that's close to the middle. That's kind of the middle. That's
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably a lot of people that leave out of here with their arrows and they're shooting, 430 to 440,
Yeah. I would say
425, somewhere in there.
I would say that's towards the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, there's exceptions to that when you're talking low poundage people and stuff like that are shooting a way
So-
lighter spine.
based on what you're seeing, where do you think you're going to be at this year?
I don't know yet because I've done some stuff today just testing. I say testing, very crude testing, but I'm a little bit shocked. And if it holds true all the time, it makes me be like, are we wrong?
Okay. Tell us about that. So what did you do today?
Josh said he sets at 460. Anyway, this morning, if anybody watched our Ultra products,
I watched you almost lose your bow.
yeah, it did. I wasn't quite warmed up, and it took me back to static real quick.
That was pretty awesome.
I did that for the people, but no. Anyway, I was playing with arrow weight, and this is kind of what set me on this mindset all day long today. But I had a 350 grain arrow, I had a 450 grain arrow, and I had a 550 grain arrow, and the spread between those is 70 feet per second. So the 550 shot like 295-ish.
Which is still fast.
Which is fast. And it's, but here's the deal. You could put that in your bow and you'll probably have a 70 feet per second spread.
Absolutely.
And our bows aren't the equal.
That pretty much will
You know
go
what I mean?
across the board.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you'll see maybe some variance there because different style cams and stuff like that, maybe.
But not drastically
but
different.
to some degree, anybody that shot those should somewhat see that kind of spread.
Yeah.
So that 70 feet, that's significant.
Yeah.
70 feet a second. That's a bunch if you think about it. But anyway.
And that was between a 350, a 450.
I got here this morning and I rigged up 3 arrows and I weighed them all. And when I say 350, like 351, and then my 450 might have been 449. I mean, basically a 350 grain arrow, a 450 grain arrow, and a 550. So the 550 was right around 295-ish. And then all the way down to the 350 was 355.
All right. Now, what did that relate to in regards to your speeds? Can you recall that by chance?
Yeah, 355.
355 on the 350?
Yeah, and 295 is somewhere in there. I shot them a couple of times to get like 297, 295 on the 550.
295.
The 450 was what I basically hunted at, and it was
320.
like 321, 2,
Yeah.
3. So it always lands there in the 320s somewhere.
Okay. That's interesting.
So there's
so it was roughly 60 on their speed then.
Yeah. Those numbers, Josh figured at one time, I figured we got anywhere from 65.
So
right.
What does that 60 feet a second correlate to in regards to inches in a target?
Well, here's what I did. I took my...
Because one would think, based on Troy Fowler's argument, and if you guys are familiar, if you guys follow archery at all, Troy Fowler is the ranch fairy. He promotes a heavy setup and is pretty adamant that that's the way a guy should be shooting. Heavier arrows, heavier broadheads.
I mean, he would say for more lethality. You're more lethal.
More lethal. Yeah. But he would also...
He wouldn't stand there and tell you it's going to shoot better or flatter. He's not out of reason when he says. He's just talking about killing an animal. That heavy arrow is more lethal.
Okay.
That's basically his hole.
And the reason for that is because he wants 2 holes, not just one.
Okay.
Always wants
He always wants 2 holes.
holes. Wants an exit.
So,
Wants a pass through.
okay. So there's a couple different things that come to play in my mind when that's the case. One of those would be the problem to me would probably be the broadhead more than the actual weight.
Yeah, and I mean, and he's a huge in the broadhead.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, he's always talking.
Yeah, but
the right head.
what I'm saying is you can probably shoot a higher speed, lower weight, and still with a cut on contact yield the 2 holes.
Right. Well,
he's also banking on the worst case scenario shot. You know,
Yeah.
He's one of those guys. You plan for A, but you're also prepared for plan B if the animal takes a step or jumps the string.
Yeah.
Is your setup gonna get
he's
you
always
2 holes?
Yeah, he's always going to tell you. And my mind's always been geared like that. I mean, I'm shooting for the perfect, low double lung, going to separate some arteries off the heart type shot. But that ain't always the shot you get.
Yeah.
That's why for years, and a lot of people didn't agree with me, but I shot the rocket stillhead because, man, it would just break bone and stay together and go on through. And it was a mechanical that a lot of people's like, why are you shooting a mechanical? Because it didn't have a big cut. Remember, it had like 1 1/8 inch, which
I liked them.
You can get that out of
that stillhead was tough.
Oh, it was just, man, it was a and I wasn't after a big cut even back then. I was like, I don't need 2 inches if I make a good shot. And generally the bad shot contacts a big bone. The worst shot was the humerus, the biggest bone in the shoulder, or, the biggest part of the shoulder that stopped your arrow. And if you remember, I shot a deer one time a long ways with those and broke his front shoulder.
I don't remember.
Yeah, you would if I brought it back up to you. But so, anyway, but what I did today also, not on camera, was just showing you the spread of feet per second just by changing nothing on the bow, just changing arrow weight. You're starting to freak me out.
You like that blueberry muffin?
Don't choke on it. Please don't choke. But was I go back there, and this is pretty crude. This is when I say crude, a crude way of testing it. So I take that 355 feet per second, 350 grain arrow, and I take that, what was the other one? 450 back there. And we've got targets that are brand new, never been shot at the bottom. I was like, I'm going to shoot them in the bottom. I was going to
ask you if you shot at the...
No, I made, every time I shot it, that target had never been impacted there. And I shot it like 5 or 6 times next to the 450. And every time that 350 grain arrow was 3 to 6 inches deeper in the target. Now, when I say that, I say it's crude because it's just a target.
Let me jump in real quick because I want to make sure that Josh is going to get this because it's going to be good. So the same standard that you're using for your speed is the same one that you're saying isn't good enough for the small diameter.
Well, how's that?
I mean, you said the
That's
target
why I said
does
it's
not
crude.
equate.
That's why I said it's crude. I mean, it's crude. Here's the thing. They were the same.
I just saw my window and I was like, yep.
They were the same diameter shaft.
Yeah.
So the friction going into the rubbing element of that shaft would be roughly the same target, never been impacted in that area, same diameter shaft. The only difference is one's going 355 feet a second and one's going 320 some feet a second. Every time. One time it was 6, easy 6. It's anywhere from 3 to 6 inches deeper every time in that target. So I would love now, here's what I would love to do, and I may do this in the days ahead, and we can follow this up later. Maybe you just need to shoot different mediums, cardboard boxes, Need to stack boxes up and shoot them, see
Shoot
which
some
one
foam.
goes deeper. Shoot some foam, see which one goes deeper. Rig up some hard, like 0 penetration test and just see, does one stick into steel? Or,
Yeah.
that's where you start talking integrity of the arrow.
Yeah.
Line up a bunch of bones, and we got deer antlers laying everywhere. I'll shoot some deer antlers and see if one pops through it and one just hits it and blows to pieces. I don't know.
I think people would be intrigued by that. Seems like you're getting some traction with your videos that you were doing in the morning.
The thing is, we've always been told that heavier, 100 grains heavier, not just 20 grains heavier.
Right.
100 grain heavier arrow. We've always for years been told that weight equals penetration.
And you're saying it doesn't necessarily.
I don't know. I'm saying, how come every time that one's deeper? Does speed overwhelm weight? And we talked about this off camera, that if they always have said in the ballistics world, if you're to defeat armor, like tanks and military, all that stuff, it's the faster moving that baby is, it'll defeat armor, it'll penetrate armor. So you can have smaller projectiles like in rifles, and you'll get penetration with a smaller, faster, like a 3,800 feet a second 220 Swift will pop through iron, where a great big old 450 something 400, like the big 40 caliber rifles and bigger, won't, because they're heavy, but they're so big and bulky and slower, they can't push through.
So I want to know what Jarrett thinks about this, because Jarrett, you're
more
a
of
weight guy.
Yeah, I like to tend to lean more to the heavier side, but that does make a guy think. It does challenge my thinking for sure.
Okay.
But why is it in that case? Well, we can go back to I guess that's real world archery there. I was thinking more like, well, if we're gonna go to bust a concrete pad up, I'm grabbing the sledgehammer. That's gonna be slower to get the crack. Whereas, if I was to grab just a hammer and swing it as hard as I can, jump up and just swing it, I ain't gonna do nothing.
I don't know. Physics definitely comes into play here.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what's still got me holding back a little bit.
All right.
That's what we've always said. We've used all those things like that. We've said all those things for years. Well, I'm going to hit them with a sledgehammer.
Right.
It's like hitting them with a sledgehammer. It's like throwing a steel rod through them. We've said all these things,
like an axe, or yeah. Because you name it, about every company's had a sledgehammer or an axe, or
yeah.
But those are just things that's been said.
Yeah. They're
and if
gimmicks to sell.
Yeah, and if I go back in there tomorrow and I shoot 30 shots with an arrow that's going 355 feet a second, that's 100 grains less than that one going 320. And even if it's 90 in the 90 percentile, it's deeper in the target. I'm like, no, wait a minute. Because you could have some flaws in that target where you could hit a spot where one goes deeper and one doesn't.
Right.
So let me ask you this.
But if it averages out every time that's deeper, and they're the same, I'm not dealing with the small diameter.
So if that's the case, there's problems with that theology.
What's that?
That weight would carry over to penetration.
Well, it would seem that way, wouldn't
it?
And like I said, that's a crude test. And maybe in the days ahead, I'll set up and I'll start slinging. I can't sling that particular arrow because there's another test I did that made that arrow disappear.
but it's the same test.
But yeah, I can get another 350 grain.
So that was going to be my next thing. So what are the advantages of weight?
I'm having a hard time finding them now.
What would you argue the advantages of weight would be?
The advantages of weight would be penetration, in my mind, in the overall damage, is as far as back to the whole hitting the guardrail and stuff,
So,
but with that being said, with Lathan and testing, that does,
So you're saying penetration is the driving factor on weight?
I would say so. I think a lot of weight I would lean more that way. Yes.
So what would be the the thing about speed that it's like the reason I shoot speed is this.
I feel like here's the deal. If I could shoot an arrow 700 feet a second comfortably and shoot good and draw the bow and not do what I did this morning all the time or something like that, where I can't even hardly handle the bow, that I wouldn't do it. But if I could, I would,
Yeah, but
because
you're
I'm not
missing.
going to miss.
Here,
That's the
I still need
advantage.
you to answer my question though.
Well, what's
What's
the question,
the
I guess?
advantage of shooting speed?
That's what I was getting to. I won't miss
Smaller
So,
gaps. Smaller gaps. on this.
Smaller
because,
guys.
good grief, I can set.
And that is one
I don't
thing.
have to judge my yardage. Right. I feel like, and people can call me on this, but I feel like with that arrow, I'll stay conservative. With that arrow going 355, I do not have to adjust my pin 40 and in.
So
That means there's less room for error as far as judgment. The time to target is way quicker. Everybody knows whitetails are skittish and they drop. So I'm going to get my arrow there. Good grief, 60 plus, maybe more feet per second to the target. That's less movement that animal could do before I impact him. And in that regard, I got more pictures with my deer than I would have possibly shooting a slow, heavy setup.
So there's a reason for my questions.
He's thinking.
I mean, I just go back to the video I've watched of Troy where the girl that was shooting on a deer had a string attached to the arrow because she was not the greatest shot. And you could see the arrow go through the air and hit the deer, and the deer didn't react. And his argument, it's all based on the deer and how it comes in, how quiet your setup is. You know, is your arrow screaming through the air? It don't matter how fast it's going. If it's whistling, the deer's going to spook.
Yeah, but that can be overcome by several things. Like, so that argument to me is totally bunk.
And why is that?
Because you can change your veins, you can change several things to make sure that it's not screaming.
You can quiet them down.
Yeah.
Right.
So
But, I mean,
that argument,
obviously anything that's going way faster, the bows that are way faster makes more sound. I mean, Josh is on here. He's got a phase 4 and he's got it all weighted down. And that thing is quiet as a mouse. It is. When I'm out there shooting with him, it's like poof, when it goes off, poof, and mine's louder.
yeah.
So there is that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no denying that.
Here's my thing. So I see with speed, your time or your shooting distances that you wouldn't be able to shoot with penetrate or with weight. I see,
And you have more energy down there.
You do have more energy downrange. I mean, he's
absolutely
yeah.
you do,
because it's still
so
singing.
Your time to target is
slower.
Less.
Yeah.
Your smaller gaps on your pins. Your a lot greater chance at beating the deer in speed.
Mm-hmm.
And with weight, I see penetration. Man, like to me, it's how do you make
that's
that
where
argument?
The happy medium is the way to go. But with me, I like the penetration side, so I'll always lean just a touch heavier.
But the argument becomes,
what if I
though,
hit
are
two
you
shoulders?
Getting at what you think? Are you getting what you think? Because if you're not, you just bought into something that killed.
Well, here's why, and I have experience at this. I had a doe at 25 yards 2 years ago with a 350 spine arrow with a 100 grain broadhead. It was a mechanical. I shot her behind the shoulder like you're supposed to.
You just said the magic words. It was a mechanical. I'm arguing that is the case.
But it's all in the broadhead.
The mechanicals are killing people's kinetic.
Could be one of the biggest problems. I do go with that. Because
here's the thing though. I mean, I was just talking about speed references. Is like I was shooting, like 300 feet a second or 310, I think, and half of my arrow was still stuck in her.
I mean,
out the other side.
Here's the deal.
And I had horrible blood, and she ran a long ways because she didn't bleed.
Yeah, but man, I'm just telling you, I've shot over 100 whitetails with an arrow, and there's some weird things that happen.
Yeah, there are.
I mean, I've shot some whitetails. I was like, no blood. And when you get to them, you're like, how come? You know, with fixed heads. And people's like, well, you probably have a mechanical didn't. No, I shot her with a fixed head and she didn't bleed. And then you hit the next one roughly in exactly the same spot. And it looks like it looks like somebody died 10 times over out in the woods. They bleed so much. So, I mean, there's strange things that happen there. And I don't know if anybody will ever be able to explain all those. But I took this note and go back through my book of remembrance. And Wes will tell you, I got a good book of remembrance.
He does.
I go back through my book of remembrance in my head of shooting deer with archery equipment. And when I switched to mechanicals, and I'm not against them. I'm not 100% against them even now. But when I switched to mechanical broadheads, book of started remembering arrows leaving with the deer. That means when the deer ran off, my arrow was still in them.
I will agree with that.
And I have went back this year or last year to 100% fixed. And I didn't shoot a lot of animals with them, but I buried a full frontal shot on an elk to the fletching. And then I shot all the way through another deer. So, I mean, I don't have enough tests, but in my head, when I go back to when I started shooting mechanicals is when I have a lot more deer run off with an arrow stuck out. Now they died.
Right. Yeah.
And I got them, but they had the arrow left in them.
So I guess my argument would just be what I said. Like all the things that come with speed, like all I can see on weight is penetration. Like the only argument. And if Troy, Ranch Fairy was in here, I would ask him that same thing. Like if penetration is what you're going for, I understand that. But all the things that you give up for it, is it worth the penetration? Because here's the deal. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's in the ground 6 inches behind the deer or not. Like at a certain point, it's only that second hole that you're really wanting. So,
and at the end of the day, did you get to hold it and take a picture with it?
Yeah.
Right.
Or did you miss it because your bow was slow enough that he ducked it? I mean, we videoed for almost 20 years. More duck than don't.
Yeah.
More duck than don't. And you don't realize that till you start videoing your hunts, and you'd put it on the screen, edit it, and you'd be like, watch this. And they all duck. And we've had some that totally ducked it.
See, I even heard that in the 1800s, there was debate on whether to name the game Duck, Duck, Deer or Duck, Duck, Goose.
More of them drop. And it's a reaction to sound. And some people say it's a reaction to the arrow. Some people say it's a reaction to the thump of the bow. I lean towards the bow because I've shot several deer in my book of remembrance, and I think back, I shot them in windy conditions or they were totally sidetracked, and it's obvious they didn't hear the bow, and those are the ones that don't move.
So let me ask you this. If you're shooting weight, what are you comfortable shooting distance-wise?
Well, I was shooting a crazy
falls
heavy
apart like a dollar watch there, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it all depends on ethnicity or whatever you say that word for yourself. For me, I'm not going to shoot a deer outside 50 yards.
Ethics.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
I am not going to shoot a deer.
I will say this. Ethics is actually on my list of things to be like. Ethics is complete garbage. Like,
that's all personal. That's all personal.
You
for
can't
me
say
as a
it's
shooter myself.
That's why it's complete garbage.
Yeah,
it's personal.
I don't know if I could say it's complete garbage.
Man, like the standard.
I mean, because you want to make a good shot and you want to.
I want to take care of the animals. Yes,
and you want to get him killed as quick as you can.
Absolutely.
So that's your measuring rod.
But who's to say what that measuring rod is?
I agree.
I think it's personal skill and how confident you are in yourself. Like for
Yeah.
him, he's
I
an
mean,
outstanding shot.
There will be people that will hear me say that will take offense to that big
Sure,
time.
because they
Well, that's just anything today.
I
But
think
here's the deal.
I agree with you there that people take that and almost use it as they weaponize it to some degree.
Sure they do. Like I've heard, I don't know how many people say that, oh, I wouldn't shoot that shot because, like I wouldn't do that. That man,
And
that's the
they're saying
weirdest
it
thing to me.
with the timbre in their voice of like, you shouldn't do that either.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to me,
That's
like,
what I mean when I say
who
weaponize.
is to say what you can do better than you?
That's right.
Right.
And that's what kind of what Jared's saying,
Yeah.
where it's somewhat personal.
Man, it totally is. Like, and
we talked about this, and tell me if you don't think, I think this is a real deal here. So we never did Google it. We was going to Google it. Maybe someone in the comments, Google this and tell us when the first archery season in Illinois was.
it would have had to have been in the
Early 70s,
yeah.
somewhere in there, maybe possibly late 60s, but I bet early 70s or something. Now then think about the equipment they were using.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them went to the woods with recurves and longbows.
A little bit's changed since then, I would say.
Wooden
Just a
wooden
little bit,
shafts,
just a little bit.
wooden. I mean, some of them probably using wooden shafts.
Yeah.
And you can kill with those things, but it's not the same game. So the point I'm making is, Grandpa, which wasn't Grandpa when he started, but now he's Grandpa, he hunted the first, and I hope I don't upset people, but he hunted the first archery season in Illinois. And he knew his equipment, 20 yards was about it.
Yeah, but knowing your equipment.
So right.
That's another thing.
What I'm
Knowing
getting
your
ready to
equipment,
say
getting
is,
out
what
in
I'm
the
getting
yard
ready
and
to say
shooting.
is, now he told his boy, now son, when you get out there, I don't want you shooting past 20 yards because you just, your equipment, it's just, they're not very lethal out there past 20 yards or you can't hit good. Well, then he told his boy, and we're going off the same standards that Grandpa had.
Yeah.
When Grandpa was shooting 160 to 200 feet a second, maybe.
Right.
With wooden shafts and 5-inch feathers and those, there's nothing wrong with all those things, but they will not send an arrow 310 or 20 feet a second down range with pinpoint accuracy, with technology and broadheads now, better steel, better everything,
right.
better shafts, better inserts, better components, better vanes. But we're still have the same standard sometimes if we don't watch it for what they were dealing with. And I think that came down, maybe innocently, but it came down because there's people around here that won't shoot past 30 yards. Now, if they're not comfortable, then don't.
Yeah. And I guess that's my major argument there. Like I see Tim Wells on the internet shooting things at 100 yards. I mean, he shot a coos deer at 100 yards. And when he did it, I was like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are people that will look at him and be like, unethical. Did he kill it? Yeah, he killed it.
Yeah.
Like, who's to say what ethics is? Because your standard for what ethics is and my standard for what ethics is on something that's so subjective is messed up.
Right.
So that'd be a slippery slope, right? Because someone's going to say, well, then where's the, how do you say, well, here's the line?
I mean, we can look at a moral standard where it's like, oh, we're looking at the Bible and we can see what the 10 commandments are.
Right.
That's a standard.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we do that on
Personal
shooting
skill
distance?
level.
Well, 30 yards is as far as you go. Bull.
Yeah. And they can't question the lethality at those ranges because people, well, Tim Wells also killed an elk at 120 plus yards with a bow.
And it was awesome.
And killed it. Yeah. So the equipment.
It sounds like to me, not to budge in, but like the Midwest, it's like a Midwest frame of mindset because out West, you guys have told me it's like, you better be ready to shoot an elk at 80 yards if you get the chance.
It 100% is. And if you go out West, I mean, those guys will tell you, you better be ready to shoot distances.
Yes.
Yeah. But as soon as you get in the Midwest, they're like, well, out past 30, slow down.
Yeah. Well, but the game changes. So you have to make the argument the game changes because and when I say the game, the animal changes. I mean, a whitetail can jump out of his tracks and be gone at 80 yards before the arrow gets
Can
there.
an antelope do that?
True that. He can. He's the fastest thing on the North American continent. You have the power of the body. Do it again. Hit it again.
That's right. Oh, yeah.
What was you going to say?
I just, my argument is that it's just messed up, man. Like, people are coming up with these things that it's really whatever my standard is, I'm
Should
going to
be.
hold you
Yeah.
to it.
It's the same way
Right.
with bucks.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why, to
This is
me,
my standard.
the
and
whole
if you
thing
shoot
about
this,
ethics
yeah.
ought to go out the window.
I totally agree.
Let's take care of the herd. Let's make sure that we honor it and respect it the way that we ought to.
Yeah.
And beyond that, whatever you can do, do it.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
if I'm shooting pinwheels at
if you can get in
60
the
and 70
ditch,
yards.
yeah. And if you can get in a ditch and you can stalk one, do it.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you can do things within the law, do it.
Yeah.
And beyond that, people ought to mind their own business.
That's
You
right.
hear that? Mind your own business.
Well, I don't disagree. I think I agree, and I think you've probably heard me say this phrase: "Who wrote that book?"
Yeah.
When it comes to ethics, because I mean,
Nobody wrote it. Nobody.
Who wrote the book of ethics? I've had people cast a little shade on me because I've killed, and the number keeps climbing of the deer I've killed past 50.
Yeah.
Plumb out in the 60 and a little beyond range.
You should be ashamed.
Well, I've had people say, "Oh, I wouldn't do that. That's unethical." I've had that very thing said
Yeah.
to me, and my thing was, well, who wrote that book? Where's the handbook on that? I mean, because if you've never shot your bow past 30 yards, then by all means keep your shots at 30 yards
Right.
in.
There's not anybody in this county 100% that shoots as much as you. Like, no way.
Well, there probably is. Gosh, there's
dude.
guys out there that shoot like crazy, but
I can tell you, being around you, there's not anybody I know that shoots anywhere remotely close.
well,
I
that
second
could be.
that.
That could be.
I mean,
I like to punch holes in targets. I enjoy,
and that
I
doesn't
enjoy
mean
pulling
that-
it back and letting it go.
it doesn't mean that there aren't guys that go out and shoot a few shots when they get home.
Right.
But there's not anybody that does what you do, in my opinion. Now, all that being said, to me, that's garnered you the ability, in my mind, to be able to shoot where you feel comfortable shooting.
Yeah.
And I don't have the right to be able to tell you that. Like, I'm not going to come in and be like, slow down, you've exceeded my limit for you.
So an interesting take that just came to my mind. It's like, I wonder if they ever compared it to like sports, like as basketball. You know, like if a guy who's really good at shooting the three can shoot the three, but the coach says the guy that's not so good at shooting the three doesn't shoot the three. You know what I mean? So as far as distance with archery,
So I guess
It's skill level.
I've
It is
never
skill
heard
level.
anybody say to Steph Curry, that shot wasn't ethical.
Exactly. No.
I'm getting
yeah.
fired up, and I probably shouldn't. But to me, there's something about that seems weird.
Right.
Like, it seems like to me, in the archery industry, we should encourage, lift people up, and be the best you can be.
Right.
Because right now,
Inside of your
we're
game.
literally in an industry that's doing this all the time.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Like,
true.
We
then
just opened up a bow shop in an industry that's doing this.
and your eyes are dilating bigger. Also. But also, I lost my train of thought.
I think it's
Your
this
eyeballs,
coffee
yeah.
that you made.
But yeah, and the same industry gouges all the time. Or I
Why-
shouldn't say the industry.
Why do they do that?
I shouldn't say the industry, the hunters within it.
Gouge at each other.
Like I said,
They do.
They'll gouge
Yep.
you because you didn't shoot one with 5-inch bases that's 7 years old.
Yeah.
They'll gouge you because you shot this when you shouldn't have shot this. And if you're in your 5th or 6th or 7th year or 10th year and this is what you wanted to shoot, then you should have shot it. If
Right.
that's what you wanted to shoot. There's a lot of different facets within that go into play for that. If there's guys telling me I won't shoot nothing but this, I won't shoot nothing but a 6-year-old, and then they shoot this, I'm like, well, maybe you're just not there yet, homie. So quit telling everybody that you're not going to shoot a younger deer. But if you're the guy that just wants to go hunting and bring one home, and this is what ends up coming in front of you first, and I may have the thought, golly gee, that thing would have turned into something, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
It really would have
right,
turned
yeah.
into something. But I better pat you on the back and say, proud of you. Good shot. Did you make a good shot? How far did you go? And let them tell their story and not cast judgment on them, because not everybody thinks about it the same way you do. And
testify.
and this needs to be. It started as a for one. Well, it started, depending on how many years you go back. It started as a way to feed yourself.
Yeah.
And it's still that to a great degree, because we love to eat them.
But it became something to bring us together.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the old timers and people's fondest memories was deer camp.
Yeah.
And now it's like, don't get near me.
Stay
Don't tell
off my
nobody
ground.
about that deer. He's top secret. He's mine, and he ain't no more yours than the man in the moon. And then when somebody gets him, you're upset. And now I want to tell you how you should do it, when we should, yes, train the younger ones. When if I take a kid out here and work with him on his bow, and we're 2 weeks in and he's only pulling 48 pounds and he's shooting real good at 20 and 25 is decent, then I'm going to say, here's where you need to be, probably, because that's the limits. That's the edge of your limitation.
The limit of your equipment.
Yes. And
there's
and
a
his
difference in
ability
the
and equipment working
yes,
together.
There absolutely is.
And I should train him to know the edge of his limit.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I should train him, not to tell him, you do it like me and exactly like me. And if you ever go past that, you're no good.
Yeah.
That's unethical. Ooh, made me
I
feel
like
good on the inside.
Preach it.
So it's not been that long ago. I would say within the last week and a half or so.
Mark finally noticed, I have to root in on you. He finally noticed that we have a vintage hat night going.
Well, vintage hat night. Woo woo.
Go ahead. I had to get that in there.
So it's not been that long ago that a guy came in and began to talk about this with me. And man, it just really resonated whenever he got to talking about it, because you could tell one thing he said is, he's like, I may have 80 acres. The guy that I'm judging might have 10.
Right. Yeah.
And he might not ever see a good deer. And his good deer is coming off of somebody else's 100 acres that he just hopes it wanders over his way.
Right.
And if a 120 wanders over his way and he takes it, he's excited about it.
Yeah. His heart was beating. He was excited.
That's right. And then the guy that's got the 80 is looking at him and being like, can't believe you shot that.
I passed that deer 4 times. Been trying to let that one go.
Like,
get off your tower.
That's exactly right, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I
mean, that whole deal with Waddell and with, several guys have come out recently talking about how it's pay to play in the hunting industry. And I want to do one podcast where we really dive into that hardcore.
Pay to play?
Yeah.
I think it was, did I say this right? I think it was Jay Gregory that said, a big deer is not a big deer anymore. And there's big enough players in the game, basically what you're saying, spending enough money on properties and foods and minerals and whatever else there is.
If you've got money, you can buy a big deer.
And that's so true.
You can.
That's so true.
Well, define that then. Are you saying they're paying to go hunt an outfitter? Because that's the way it used to be, but I think it's changed now. It's like all about one or two guys owning the property.
There's so many different avenues to do that. Like, you could call someplace like Sampson's Ridge. You could go do that. If you want to kill an absolute freak.
Yeah, you can go down there and kill a 300.
If you're wanting to kill a wild one.
But they're high fenced.
There's all sorts of guys that are like, well, I got a picture of this 200, and somebody will come and pay you to kill that 200.
Right.
Yep.
Like, to me, it has become how much money do you have to kill the big deer?
And then the other avenue would be they've got the money to spend on properties that they can ball up.
They do.
Between you know, and it's a free country. If you got the money and you've worked hard and you've developed,
and I'm not
and
even
you've
necessarily
built your
besmirching
brand.
people for that in that aspect, but it's become, or it's quickly becoming, something that to me could be dangerous for the industry.
Well, yeah, for sure. Let me tell this story. I've told it a bunch lately. I may have told it to you guys, but I haven't told it to all these listeners out there. It was just a while back. My dad, I mean, he's deer hunted some, but he's not a huge deer hunter. That being said, if he ever goes, he tends to kill a giant. But he's killed like 3 big deer in his life, and he's only hunted about 4 years with a bow, that is. But anyway, he was in a coffee shop here a while back. He was telling me this. He was in a coffee shop, and there was some particular landowner complaining about the deer herd, how big it was, and the damage they were doing to crops and stuff like that. And my dad, knowing that individual had, you know, let's just say for the sake, I don't know for sure, but several hundred acres leased out to hunters. My dad said, "Well, you're the problem." And he said that guy was like, "Well, how in the world? Well, I mean, what do you mean? How am I the problem? What have I got to do? I'm not a deer hunter. I just own the land, and you deer hunters need to kill more deer. They're destroying crops. You know, the numbers are too high." He's complaining about it. And Dad said, "Well, you're the problem." He goes, "Well, how am I the problem?" He said, "Well, don't you lease all that, whatever hundreds of acres of property you got down there? It's all leased out." He said, "Yeah." He said, "How many guys got it leased?" I think there was 4 guys hunt it.
Yeah.
He said, "What are they after?"
The big bucks.
He said, "So if they all fill their tag, they killed 4 deer. Now, they may kill a doe or 2. If they all killed a doe and a big buck and went back home to Georgia or went back up north in Illinois, wherever they're from, they killed 8 deer off several hundred acres."
Yeah.
Dad said, "Used to, I killed 2 or 3. The boys killed 2 or 3. The neighbors down the road killed 4 or 5. Old John, Billy Bob, what's his name up there? They killed 12 because they had a lot of kids and they eat them off that same property. We killed 25 or 30 deer off that property." He said, "You're the problem because you leased it out. And now they're only killing 4 off of it."
In regards to farmers, that is the case.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, the lease probably outweighs what they lose. The damage. Yeah. So they're not going to reverse that, but
yeah,
you can't sit and complain about it if you're leasing it all
Right.
out.
There's a lot of things in this industry and a lot of things in the argument that you can't go back.
Yeah. I think Waddell, when he said, "I'm over it," I think what he was saying was, in a roundabout way, I'd love to go back.
Yeah.
To when we were just running and gunning and loving hunting.
Yeah.
And people weren't fighting.
Hunting and fishing and
loving every day.
Who says that?
Luke Bryan.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, I think that's what he's saying. He just wants to enjoy hunting. He wants to watch his kids hunt and not feel like someone's casting judgment on him if they shoot whatever they want to shoot.
Yeah.
Because you're Waddell's boy. You ought to be killing the biggest, or whatever. Whoop-de-doo. I think that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
In a roundabout way. And I've said that for the last couple of years because I've seen it go in that direction.
Well, I feel like we covered a lot this evening.
So at the end of the day, do you want to shoot heavy and slow or light and fast?
Lightning fast. Kyle Martin chimed in that we can use his expedite for the test to come. So
his expedite?
Yep.
Oh, the PSE expedite.
Man, we appreciate you guys tuning in this evening.
Yeah, Mark's questioning the hats, but it's
hat night, Mark.
Yeah.
Bet you wish you were here, don't you?
You got to be cool to do this.
Yeah, that's right.
We got a hat. Where's it at? We were going to wear it. It says what? That
get that hat real quick so the guys at home can see it. Mark, we had this hat ready for you if you would have just showed up.
Yeah.
But you didn't. So here we go. Women want me, deer fear me. There you go. Yeah. That's Mark's hat. So Mark, if you if deer ever decide to fear you, you can come get it. So, there we go.
Anyway, $5.
That's pretty awesome.
$5.
Well, it's been good. Anybody that watches this, make sure you fill the comments out. We'll scroll through the comments in the days to come if you are in the archives, and may have to address this again because it's a pretty passionate subject.
Got me fired up.
I did. I saw your pupils
My
dilate.
My eyes are dilating over there.
I see your
Lathan
pupils
preaching on the other side of the
dilating all
table.
sudden. I was like,
Oh man.
all right, good time.
That's right. So we appreciate you guys watching. If you guys get a chance, like, share, comment.
And what do you think about this guy?
Yeah. What do you think about that? If you guys get a chance, make sure you do those things. We are really trying to grow this channel, trying to make sure that guys get a chance to see what's going on here. If you get a chance, stop in the store. All the time we're bringing new stuff in. We've got all sorts of bow fishing stuff that we ordered today. Bow fishing season's coming up, and I kind of feel like the guy after the preacher that's trying to
wrap it up.
Yeah, wrap it up. But there's all sorts of things in the shop that'll be coming in here in the upcoming weeks.
You ordered a bunch of stuff today, didn't you?
We did. Yeah. Yep.
Awesome.
And next week we've got Craig Clark coming on. We haven't nailed down a topic yet, but Craig is an awesome dude.
He is.
Anytime Craig's around, it's always interesting. So
Yeah.
he's got a unique sense of humor, and at the same time has a wealth of knowledge. Something that we've not had on the show in a while. I'm kidding.
Yeah, but he's we love Craig. I'll very much look forward to sitting down and whatever we talk about, because me, you, and Craig and Richard Hooper, we kind of kicked off
20 years ago. We started something called Team Harvest, which was just it was a ministry.
It was Craig's.
It was Craig's baby,
and we were just part of it.
Yeah. And he contacted us and said, "Hey, let's do this."
Yeah.
And man, we went to a lot of shows, and because of it, I mean, we saw a lot of guys' lives, I feel like, impacted and touched because of it. And he may want to talk about that next week, so we don't want to go too deep into it, but it was awesome. So we did that for...
He told me I was like the scarecrow when I left Team Harvest.
Like the scarecrow?
Yeah, on Wizard of Oz. He said, "Lathan, I think I'll miss you most of all."
Oh, that's funny.
You laugh, but that's what he told me. No, we look forward to it. So tune in next week.
Yeah,
Craig Clark, and whatever we talk about will be great.
If you get a chance, make sure you tune in. Yeah, I guess we'll see you next week. See you next week. So here we are, nearly 9 weeks into Up for Discussion podcast. And Lathan and I would just like to say thank you so much for all those who've been watching week in and week out. It means a lot to us, and we greatly appreciate it. However, there's one thing that you could do that would help us out tremendously right now. And what it is if you're watching on Facebook, like, subscribe, comment, share. All those things help to push us up and to let us not only stay in contact with you, but also to make sure that we can grow this channel in an efficient manner. If you're watching on YouTube, one thing that you can do is you can hit the bell up at the top. That bell will subscribe you to our channel on YouTube. So anytime that we upload a video, you are the first to know. All those things will help us not only grow the channel and the page, but also continue to bring fantastic outdoor entertainment to you guys at home. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we're providing you guys with not only knowledge, education, but also entertainment. So sit back and we're going to continue Up for Discussion podcast.